Okay, we're on page 22. Yudav from base. You can write with anything. The get. B'dio, these are various different types of ink. Dio is a black ink. Sikra is like a reddish ink. Kumas is another type of ink. They're all different types of ink. Kantom, anything which marks. However, ink when you may not write, lo b'mashkin, not with beverages, lo meperos, nor with fruit juices, lo b'chol davar she'eino shochem, not with anything which doesn't last because it fades very quickly. Al kol guys, you can write on anything. Al olive shozayis, on an olive leaf, olive tree leaf, keren shapora, and on the horn of a cow. No support, and you give the woman the cow. Yad shel eved, you can write it on the hand of an eved. No salas eved, you give her the slave. You can't write something which is alive, nor on food either. Okay, it's got to be something which is dead and is not food, and the Gemara is going to say why. Because of, it says you write the get, not that you engrave the get. And because of not that you drip the get, and because of shofech, not that you pour the get. What do all these things mean? Because of is that's what the beginning of the brayso. East tiny, those say even if you engrave the get, it's okay. So mandamar lo chokek, you say not allowed to engrave the get. It's bepolit mokom aksav. It's where you press out. Not press in. You press out the place which is written. You know, like they stamp a coin, right? So then you're not. What you do is you stamp down the surrounding areas, and but you don't write. Actually, you're not making the image. The image comes on its own. So to the get is not being written. It's coming on its own. That's low dinara, such as when you make a coin. Manam feel chokek, he said that you can engrave the get because it's like when a student's notepad where you use a stylus in order to carve into the wax. So to here, where you're carving into a piece of wood or something like that, that would be a valid get.
Well, on the one hand, you're pressing here, you're making into
the letters. That's right. That's okay. Right. The indentation of the letters is what makes it okay. That's great. Out the indentation, right? So it says more further. Kosav lo meitiv. Now, meitiv means actually you don't actually write. If I had, let's say, a pen and I dripped ink on the paper from the pen, like that, that's not considered to be a valid form of writing. That's the kosav lo meitiv. Now you drip ink. It's a machlok. It's Ravina Bar Shomrei Mitanya Charamar Shalo Irvis and Kudos. It's only if each dot stands by itself. It's like match the dots. So then or connect the dots. So then, since you didn't connect the dots, it's not okay. But if you actually connected the dots, then it'd be okay. Okay. If they connected either by dropping ink very close to each other, I guess maybe by drawing the lines afterwards, connect the dots, that'd be good enough. Whereas the other mandamar holds that even if you mix them together, you connect them, it's still not a valid get because that's not considered to be derech of ksiva. We're having Shabbos coming up, not these things specifically, but Shabbos is coming up. But Shabbos should be chayiv as long as you produce legible writing, it'd be chayiv, right?
Even if you trimmed it with dots. Right,
it'd still be chayiv. Says Gemara, Amrei B'chia Barba, Ilain B'nei Badincha, Arimin's, skip. Kosav lo shofech. If you write and not if you pour. Amrei B'chia Barba, now what does it mean not to pour? Ilain B'nei Badincha Arimin. The treacherous people in the east. Arimin Sagi, they're very treacherous, not treacherous, very sly, very shrewd. When one wants to write a secret document to his friend, who customarily immediately writes it with meilin, which really is clear, it doesn't make an apparent impression on the paper. And the guy receives the guy receives the document. Shafir dio she'embo apot. He pours ink, which has no apot. Apot is like is something which makes the ink stick to the paper more. So you don't use this apot in this type of ink. And v'ach the makabel vukolate makom sav, and it sticks to the place where there was originally something written. So it's like invisible ink, right? So that. Yeah, we have them probably. So that's no good by a get. It has to be that not that you came about in this fashion, but rather you actually sat down and wrote it. Not you poured ink on where it was written before, and the handwriting appeared. Also came to Shabbos Mao. Right, this is the question you asked before. What if you did this on Shabbos? Any of these things on Shabbos, so you chayiv. So Tamati went over there by Shabbos. Kasav al gabi ksav. You had something written down, and you wrote on top of it. Potter, it's not your potter because you didn't do anything, constructive. Well, it was written, you wrote on top. So what did you do constructive? Rabbi Yel and Rish Lakish both said, "Vusha kasav dior gabi dior." If you wrote on the same material, the same medium, on top was already written. Ink on top of ink. Sikra gabi sikra. Avalin kasav dior gabi sikra. But if you change the medium from dior to sikra or sikra gabi dior, or vice versa, chayiv, you are liable. Okay. Rabbi Yitzhak Bar Mishash Shem Rabbanan Tamon. Rabbi Yitzhak Mishash say the name Rabbis above, and this of course is in the Bible as well. Chayiv Shtayim, you're liable to two. One mishum moichek, the other mishum kaisib, because you're erasing the underlying, right, and making the new one. So that's a logical construct. Eidim Shem Yom Machtom. What if you win this who don't know how to sign? Rishlakish Mar Roshim Fnei B'Dior.
Let's finish with Shabbos. They didn't mention about the dots.
Oh, no, they didn't. You're right. I assume it's the same thing, but you're right. They didn't mention it explicitly. Good point. I don't know. But I assume that you're chai. Because even on Shabbos, you're chai, even for Rishima, even for making notation, you don't actually have to make literal, letters. So I assume that would be creating notation, even if it's not considered to be writing a letter, but it is creating a notation. So it's going to be right. Maybe not, but I think so. It's hard, the more I think about it, the more I think maybe not, because you're not actually writing something down. You're dripping ink. It might be tzovea more than koseh. It's a good point. Probably your potter, as a matter of fact.
I don't recall.
No, we definitely didn't murder, but maybe a taka is only chai because of tzovea, not because of koseh. That might be true, and of course tzovea wouldn't necessarily be. It's a good question. Okay, so says the Gemara. We have witnesses who don't know how to sign their names. Rish Lakish said, Rosh name B'Dio. You write it in ink on the document. And they sign a different form of ink on top of it. So therefore, it becomes their signature, right? The sikra, or you write in that form of ink. They sign the other form of ink. Amar B'Yochanan said, no. Just because we're dealing with Hilchos Shabbos and we say Hilchos Shabbos, you're chayiv based on that. On Matir Eishesish, we're going to be Matir Eishesish based on that svara. In other words, it might not necessarily be true. By Shabbos, it's going to be ksiva. But here, maybe it's just not your ksiva. You're just tracing the edim underneath. So that would not be valid testimony. Whereas here you have to actually sign your own signature. What makes your own signature if you're just tracing the signature underneath? So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan is not happy with direct tracing. Okay? So what does he permit? Maybe in the Archalok, you bring a blank piece of paper, and you rip it in front of him, and they sign. Now there are two interpretations of that in Rishonim, two possible interpretations. One is that you put the blank piece of paper before him like a model, and he copies it. The other is that you make a stencil out of it, and you put the stencil on top of the paper where he's signing. Okay, and he writes, through the stencil. So the obvious.
The stencil already has the name.
Oh, so it's whose name? So, but yeah, well that's who. But no, but Gemara is ultimately not going to like this either. So says the Gemara, if you're using a stencil, It's the first guy's handwriting, right? Because the stencil was the first guy's handwriting on it. So it's not your handwriting, right? Ella machliv name b'sakera. Rather, what you do is you make a broader opening. In other words, you don't just make it conform to the handwriting of the individual who initially wrote it over, but you make it broader than that. And the guy who signs now signs centering his lines within the broader outline, so it's not fully the same writing. Okay, so it says Raimona boy. Well, I know sensory, whatever he does, but he makes it different. He makes it. So it's not precisely like the older writing from which is copied from the stencil. Raimona boy, Raimona asks, he asks, why don't we just make an impression on the document of the get with water, and they'll sign on the water, right? No, that way we can tell. I mean, the water eventually will disappear, but the water was there, and it'll show where the right after make a stencil, just right over the water, over the moist parts. Oh, so I think that's actually the Morris complaint, although nobody else interprets that way. But I think that the line in the top of the next Amud, which is very cryptic, I think interprets like that way. It says more in Bavir air Irokai. We don't do it because if it's going to smudge and run, and the bow is going to come and complain that the star Mezuyaf, right? And it's going to look Mezuyaf, right? So that's why we don't let them do it. We don't let them do it on top of another liquid because it'll look bad. Okay? Hakorea al or kitab nisksav. Now somebody who rips on a hide that which looks like writing, kosher. Haroshem al or kisav nisksav. Somebody who makes a mark on the ore, he doesn't rip into the skin, but he writes on it, something which looks like writing. It's possible. Why? Because on a hide which is not yet prepared, you can very easily forge documents. It's like parchment you could tell if it was erased and rewritten. But on the hide you can't tell, so therefore you can't give a get on the hide. Okay? It says a roshim or katab, somebody who makes the mark on the hide with his pen. Kasab niksav even looks like the regular writing, so it's no good. Okay. If the guy says this, you're getting on the condition you give it back you give it to me. Puzzle. It's no good because she's not getting the get. She's supposed to be able to keep the get. Here she can't keep the get, right? So therefore it's not a valid get. She's not acquiring it. Wherever he says on condition you give it back to me, not that you give it to me, but you give it back to me. Kosher, that's okay. Says what's the difference? Low doi kadmai, so this is not the first case we just said puzzle. Amreus said lichshed tadini. When you analyze it, you understand it better. When you make a diyun about it, an analysis. But how you understand? Amreus serabun. When he said, I want to get him, first you fulfill the mitzvah being megurashes, and then you give it back to me. So that's why it's valid. How do we know? Where do we have such a case? We're all familiar with the case. There's certain esrog. There were too many people there pushing and shoving for that esrog. And that was the situation out in the streets. Rabbi Yaakov, but now Yaakov had his own esrog, and he gave it as a matana to his son. It was a sumo of the age of bar mitzvah, because son of the age of bar mitzvah a little bit of a difficulty. And he said that he said I still lost my place. Okay, the time to again. Yaakov Targona, he gave his esrog Matoli Ibnei as a gift to his son. Varmalain, he said L'Shatiska Bo Mitzvosaf Tachzireli. When you're zoicha in it and its mitzvahs give back to me, so we see that there's this concept of give it back. Matonam Nas Lahachzir. Okay.
You said that the woman has to keep her get. She has to have.
She only has to keep it until it works. Right. As long as she doesn't have to get back right away, she's okay. That's exactly what it's saying. As long as she's aware of what she got and it works, that's sufficient. But she doesn't talk to the Bismana, so they don't keep the kid. No. They get a verification from the basin that they were divorced, but they don't keep the actual kid. Okay? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi boy, what if you wrote it on a golden cup? The get. Now, because it's a golden cup, you said, Mokom Aksav Shalech. You get the place where there are actual letters written. But the rest of it is mine. The rest of the cup is mine. Weird, but that's what he said. You get that part of the cup, and the rest of the cup is mine. So what's the halach in this case? So says the Gemara, is there writing in this? There's no ksav. Now, Gemara is not going to be so simple with this, but the Gemara gets a little bit choppy here. Gemara will come back to this later on. But it says more Ora Nikra, and this is not direct, not exactly tangent, it's similar, but it's not precisely the same. Ora Nikra Rei Kosher. If you have ripped hide, and you wrote the get on ripped hide, that's kosher. It's correct if it became ripped after it was written, Haray's apostle. That's no good. So says the Gemara, that which it's no good to begin with, that's which it's good to begin with, is only where it's ripped in other areas. But Kashaloni's Kikar basin, not where it was torn as basin tears again. Avanika Kikar basin, but if it's ripped where basin rips again, then it's possible. Even if it was ripped before he wrote the get, because and that obviously indicates that the get was not meant to. Not obviously basin wanted the apostle to get. That's why they did that, right? So Ezu Keresha basin, what's considered to be a way that basin rips a get? Bang Sav Le'edim, where you rip the get between the writing and the witnesses. So that's the way basin rips a get to apostle it. And nowadays basin rips the get a different way, obviously, to indicate that it's been used. That's the way basin wrote the get ripped it in order to apostle it. Okay? Now getting back to the cup issue, right, on the gold cup. Why is there a problem? It says in our Mishnah you can write on an olive leaf. Velokim kuruhu. Can you write the whole get on an olive leaf? So therefore, obviously, you have to use 2 or 3 olive leaves. You're nonetheless considered to be a valid get. Why is it a valid get? Should be like get ripped up get, right? Why is it valid?
It's only according to the ratio. Sefer said that anything that's living. It's not.
No, living means animal, not a leaf. Yeah. So Rabbi Zir to Tana Buna Bar Shil. So Rabbi Zir said a clear answer. He said Buna Bar Shil said, "I feel you think a get is long. The minimum share get is I feel kaisev ani plain megarish ishti kosher." So we have to write, I need plain Megarish Ishti. So that's how he wrote on the olive branch. Now, it says more getting back to the rips. The ripping, the rip gets. The Asi, that which said rip get is kosher, as long as it's not a rip basin. Kaidamar Rabila, like Rabila said, in Piresh Pasul, that as long as you have 2 parts of the get connected, even tenuously, it's okay. Only if Piresh, they're completely separated, it's no good. Being low pirish is not 2 parts of the writing are not pirish, then it's kosher. Okay? So first you learn an abbreviated get is enough. Second, we learn that it has to be that they're at least somewhat connected still. Okay? The 2 halves of the get which got ripped up in order to be perfect. Yeah, there are a whole bunch of other requirements of a get.
It's not essential.
What?
According to this, it's not essential.
Not that you should.
Oh, right, that's true. Because I guess me to a rice, all you need is this. Good point. Absolutely. Okay. All right. I want to just get a drink of water. 1 second. Go on. Says more further. Karen Shapara on the our Mishnah said that if you write it on the horn of a cow, it's good enough. Masnis in our Mishnah Amar La Harei Gitech. Our Mishnah says it's your get. So if you said to this cow is your get. Of the Amar La, if you said Harei Gitech Vashal Ksuva Sech, that the horn is the get, the rest of the cow pays off your ksuva. So then Iskapa Gittin Ksuvasa Kachas. So she gets both are getting Ksuva at once. I guess in that case she's compelled to accept the cow as her get, as her Ksuva. Right? Yeah. Amala Regitan, same thing of Amala Regitan Ksuvasa Kachas. Whatever language uses it works. Rabbi Zera boy Kumi Raimona. Man, Zera asked an interesting question for Raimona, and this is not in the Bavli at all. Most of them will say, what if you give it over the reins of the animal? You don't actually put the animal in her hands. You give her over the reins of the animal, which in the cow, obviously, very difficult to put it in her hands, right? So, Midas Adin at Oimer, according to the strict letter of Kosher Mishpat, you say that Nikne Amekach, right? That's a Kenyan. You say the same thing here. So it says the Gemara, Oshani, or is it perhaps different? It says you have to put it in your hand, Kula biyoda, so it should have to be entirely in your hand. Now, in fact, this isn't considered to be. This is considered to be a source of a chumrah. Rabbi Akiva Eiger brings down. Rabbi Akiva Eiger brings down a chumrah that which people do, which is when they give a get, so the woman puts her hands like this, right, both hands, because it says here, the whole get is beat in her hand. So she doesn't just grab onto the get like this. She puts both her hands, cups her hands, and receives the get that way.
Now, she's getting the cow. Is it in Rishus Rabim or in her own Rishus? So if it's in her own Rishus, does she have to do Mashiach or anything like that?
According to this, she has to pick up the cow. Doesn't work to do Mashiach, that's what it says. But you're right, no. If it's in her own Rishus, then her Chatzar acquires it for her. And the Chatzar, just like a Chatzar can acquire the document itself, the Chatzar can acquire the cow.
So it's not
right, it's in a simta, alleyway, see the Rishus Rabim or something like that. That's right. Okay, very good. So it says, my time is Rabbi Yosef. Now this is not in the Bavli either. The Rabbi Yosef said here. Rabbi Yosef says that what's Rabbi Yosef who apostles a get written on an animal. Sefer, ma sefer miuchad she'ein bo ruach chaim. The sefer means something which has no life. It's not right. So to the get can have it written so it's alive. And my sefer she'ein ochel sefer she'ein ochel, sefer is not food. So to have kol davar she'ein ochel can be written on food. My time Rabbana, what's the logic of the rabbis? Sefer means shubatos. Sefer is anything separate from the ground. Of course, davar shubatos is anything separate from the ground, as opposed to, and that includes an animal, because an animal is not connected to the ground, so an animal will be okay. They don't learn that the problem ruach chaim applies. Sefer can theoretically be made of ruach chaim, so therefore you can write on an animal as well. Okay?
Might eat the evidence.
Okay, yeah. Now, according to Rabbi Yosef, who says that the issue is that sefer is not considered, that animal cannot be considered sefer. So yodas ochin ka'ochin. What do we say about the things attached to the animal? Like the horns, which are like a yad, but which can hold the animal. What's their status? So the Ishminim had done this. Let's hear from here. Kasva Karnatzvi. If you wrote the get on the horn of a deer, it says you got the dough, which means that you took off the horn, right? You scratched it off. The chasman, you signed it, v'nosel, and you gave it to a kosher. Now here it says, obviously, mipnei shegad dough, v'chaka chasman. It's only because you removed it and then afterwards signed it, right? But if you first signed it and then removed it, then that's so good. So we see it seems that yados ochlin are like ochlin, because here this is a yad to the cow, and it's a problem. Right? Bob Hashem Raimai said he argues. Actually, the way some of the Achronim learn it, which I like, is that he argues. He holds no vusha kasav azachruso shokeren. The only time that the yad is a problem It's when it's more than a yard, when it's like a shomer. The Zachrus Shekeren, right? A Karen part is constructed that's an outer layer, which is the horn which we see, and then there's the inner layer. That's called the Zachrus. It's called the Zachrus because that's, it sticks in. Sticks in. It's like a zocher. It sticks in to the outer part. So like if you ever seen a shofar factory, one of the Lubavitcher shofar factories. So when they make a shofar, they pull out the guts from the inside the shofar. So this is the same idea. He's saying that it's only a problem if you wrote on Zachruso Shokeren. It's only permissible if you wrote on Zachruso Shokeren. Avlin Kasab al Nartiko, but I'm sorry. It's only probably on the Zachruso Karen, the inside part of the Karen, right? The inner part. Because that's more than a yad, it's a shomer. Because that actually is part and parcel of the head, right? But if you wrote on the outer casing of the horn, Kipparushu, if it's already separate and it's kosher.
But if it's not separated?
What? No, it says Kipparushu, it doesn't matter.
Because it's not living, it's not part of the actual...
That's right, it's not part of the actual... So
like
that which Rabbi Yossi...
nails are dead, is dead.
Right. So it's Rabbi Yossi possible, but that's only one step. It doesn't have a Zachrus inside of it. No. The Zachrus might be like a chatzitza between, the rest of it. So that's Rabbi Yossi possible, the only possible is Zachrus. Okay? Says the Gemara... Rabbi Yonah boy, Aflech Shazroimkin. Rabbi Yonah asks, is this true? Is there a parallel by Yimachshul Zroim? Now, Yimachshul Zroim, water has to come down with your willful intent, right? But it can't come down with willful intent on the ground. It has to come down with your willful intent that's something off the ground. So, is this considered to be a cow or an animal? Is that considered to be off the ground or not off the ground? Because he possibly writing a get that way, right? We said the Sefer means not something which has Ruach Chaim, and also though I don't know if we didn't actually see it, but Sefer also means it has to be separate from the ground. It can't just be karka. That's also the rationale for the Yerushalmi, the way karka cannot become theft. A get can't become a get because it's not a Sefer. It's not a book, right? Just like a Darvish Ishbel Ruach Chaim does not have is not a book. So to Glan there's not a book. Okay, so now take the flip side. So if that's the case, the question is, if water fell on a animal, is that rated to be kiyutan? And then if it fell to Ratzon, then that's going to be machshir, something else be makabel tuma.
An animal can't be machshir.
An animal can be mushra kabel tumah, but what about the water which falls on animal's back which you like? And then it dribbles onto food. Is that machshir the fruit to be makabel tumah? That's the Gemara's question.
So is the animal a chatzitza?
So it's not a chatzitza, but if it's like karka, so it's not kiyutan. It has to be that it was poured on some movable object, lishma. So the animal's like karka, so it won't work. So, says this is true about Echser Zoim. In a case where you thought that the word should come to an animal, and from the animal on the food. So here, here's actually the line I think I was looking for before. No, it's not actually the line, but anyway, it's similar thing. Tam Rabbi Yosef Glili, so it says more no. So there, Yosef Glili said safer. My Sefer Dava, this is part of the question, part of the answer. I don't know, let's see. Rabbi Yitzchak Li, Amar Yitzchak Li, Sefer, my Sefer Yuchot Dava Shem Ruach Chaim, Af Kol Davar Shem Ruach Chaim, V'hacha Umer Achein, yet here he said something here? One second. Yeah, he says that, Rabbi Yitzchak Li, Sefer Yuchad Davar Shem Ruach Chaim. I've called Davar She'ein Bo Ruach Chaim. That's the statement, not a question. You're saying here too. You would say by Gittin you have the same problem. Okay. By Gittin you would have the problem that by Gittin you have the same problem that if you. No, not by Gittin. You're right. By the water which comes down for Tumah you'd have the same problem. That's what he's saying. right? Because just like over there by get, it's not considered to be a sefer, so too it wouldn't be considered to be vis-a-vis machshir kabatuma. It's not going to be severed from the ground.
Okay, so if it pours off the animal onto the fruit,
It's going to be still be tahor. It's not going to be machshir kabatuma.
and that's because the animal is
Like karka. Right. It says more. No, there's no comparison. Shani, there it's different. The Chsiv, it says, "B'chol mashke asher yishaseh b'chol kli yitma." Any beverage which goes into a keli yitma, and there's an excess verbiage here. See b'kol, okay? You see that it says b'kol. Kutcher says kol mashke yishaseh. Every beverage you drink is to tamei. Why it say b'kol kli yitma? So that means that we would say that by mushal kabaltuma kol mashke, it's just a plain ribui. Yeah, any mashke would work in order to be mushal kabaltuma. Not any mashke. Any stage in which the mashke came down and was even remotely l'ratzon works. And that includes also animals, because only possibly animals elsewhere, not here, because it says kol mashke, any beverage would be machshir kabaltuma, because he machshir the even the water which fell on the cow first, right? Okay. So it says more. So if you're going to go further than Jumatalthi, go to animals. So say if you want the water to go down to cisterns, into tunnels, into dugouts. Let's say already that it's considered to be machshir kabaltuma. So it says Mashani Hocha the Chsiv Keli. It says whatever is Mashal Kabatuma has to do with the parameters of Keli. And Karka, it says, is simply not Keli. Okay? So that's why it has to be specifically parameters of Keli. He's being Makadosh in this case. That he's being Machshir the Kabatuma. Okay.
So the cow is like a keli.
Right. That's right. It's because of the ribui of Keli. Okay? Halach doubt. Ain't kosim mechubel karka. We can't write connected to the ground. Kasim Mechubar, if you wrote real connected, Tosho, and you severed it. The Chasmo, and you signed it, the Nasalan, you gave it to a kosher. That's okay. As long as the Chasimas, which are the primary part of the get, were done afterwards.
Like the horn from the cow.
Right.
You cut off the horn first.
But that's only, I don't know if that's true about the outer part of the cow.
The outer part.
Right, the outer part of the horn. I think that's even if you...
even if it's still connected.
Even still connected, right. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Paisa. Rabbi disagrees and says, unless you're willing to, unless you have the writing and the signatures take place separate from the ground. So not just the signatures, but also the writing. Okay? Rabbi Yoda ain't case we don't write a get. Lo near machuk, not on a race paper. V'lo diftor, not on a certain type of cloth, which is relatively easy to forge, and neshiochel is died because it could be forged. Chacham say it's okay in those cases. Okay, says the Gemara. The reason why they say it's okay, it says Rashi, is because of Edom Sirakarti. Right, we had it actually previously. So it's Edom Sirakarti, so therefore we don't care that much what goes on. You know, with the document, as long as it's written in Lishma, that's good enough. We don't need the other peripheral things. Okay? So it says the Gemara, Ha Pliga, now it should be a Ha Pliga Reish Lakish, not Rabbi Yochanan. This argues on Reish Lakish. Where's this Machlokas Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan? The Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Yochanan said, Kosav Tirfo Betofes Kosher. Yochanan said, if you wrote the Toref, meaning the Ikra part of the get, which is the last line where it says, you know, and you're free to go. If you write it as part of the Torah, as part of the inconsequential part of the get, so nevertheless, it's kosher. the get is kosher. Rabbi Shlokish Ma'in Kasa Tova B'Tovis, he wrote the consequential part of the get in the inconsequential part, so nevertheless it's possible. What I write here? So there's Shaila here. Shaila Reish Lakish. What?
Yeah, so
Shaila Reish Lakish, right? Because here it says that in our Mishnah it says you can write the whole thing and then sever the get. If you hold that the Torah is in the Tofes, then you should have to sever the get before you get to the Torah. So it must be
I don't see the similarity. It was a cut and paste. I mean, he did it the wrong way. He put the...
No. It means not that he put it in the wrong place. He didn't do it with the proper parameters which you would expect from the chasimus of the get. It wasn't mechubar or something like that. That's what we're talking about. So when it says, Rabbi Yoel said, Kasav Torah for Tofo b'Tofes, it means you wrote your Torah for it was the Tofes and no more. That's kosher, right? Shemai Kasav Torah b'Tofes possible. No, that's not good enough. You can't write the Torah as a Tofes. The Torah has to be written special, right? Now the question for our Mishnah is that it says sound like you can write the whole thing with connected to the ground as long as you separate before you put on the Eidim. So now that's not like Reish Lakish, because at least according to Reish Lakish the Torah should have the same status. Shmuel bar Abba boy. Now Shmuel Rabba asks, Kosvu v'chosmu tosh. You signed the get, wrote the get and signed it when it was severed from the ground. Chibur tosh, then he connected the ground. Don't ask me why. V'tosh, and then you severed it the ground again. Nasula, and you give it to Ma'am Rabbi Yehuda. What did Rabbi Yehuda say about such a case? So it seems clear in that case that Rabbi Yehuda would apostle it. But in any event,
he didn't add anything to the get when he reconnected it, right?
Excuse me? Yes. So the question is really, what it boils down to, the Orsa Mer says, basically Machlokes Bavli and Yerushalmi here. The Bavli holds that, the Yerushalmi holds that the reason that the get, which is severed from the grounds, it must be severed from the grounds because we said the word safer. But according to the Yerushalmi, that's according to Yerushalmi. According to the Bavli, the problem is if there's an interruption to chop it down between the writing and the giving. There shouldn't be such an interruption. You didn't want there to be interruption, it might cause complications. So therefore, in this case, if you wrote it all connected to the ground, if you wrote it all severed from the ground, then reconnected to the ground, according to Yerushalmi, maybe you can cut it off and give it to her again. According to Bavli, you couldn't cut off and give it again, because the problem is not whether a sefer was created, but whether it was mechutzer k'tzitza, whether it was lacking chopping down, in order to validate it. If it's mechutzer k'tzitza, in order to validate it, so in that case, you have to I got mixed up. The case is sorry about that. The case is a case where you wrote the document severed from the ground. Then you connect it again. Then you severed it again. So according to Yerushalmi, there should be no problem. Or at least there's a tzad to say it's okay. But according to Bavli, it's a problem because there was a time which mechutzer k'tzitza. It was lacking being severed from the ground.
Right.
That's a problem.
It was already written.
Doesn't matter, because in the procedure there can't be an interruption. Okay, it's kind of like we had last night, that once you write the get, you can't you have to immediately finish writing it. You can't leave it overnight. So to here, you can't leave an interruption in the middle. Okay, so it says my Rayavin Boy, we asked the question. I'm sorry, so let me go back to Shmuel. Shmuel Rabba Boy Kosfu, you wrote it, V'chosman signed it, B'tosh, Chibra, then you connect the ground, B'tosh, then you connect to pick it up, and Nasalah, Ma'am Rabbi Yehuda say it's kosher apostle in this case. Now Rabbi Lezer, my Rabbi Yavin Boy, Rabbi Lezer said, Rabbi asked, Kosfu B'tosh, you wrote it severed from the ground. Chibra, then you connected it to the ground. between the Torah, the get and the document, and switch the next two words around because Ridbaz do chas motosho, and then you took it, you signed it and then severed it, the Nasan law, and gave it to her. Ma'amrin berabbanan. What do the rabbis say? And the Gemara doesn't say anything. Okay, so this whole discussion, the poskim, what exactly the gather is, the Rambam passes a clue in these cases that these cases are kosher. The question of what's he relying on, because the Yerushalmi just leaves him dangling. But in any event, that's not for now. Amrei said, where's the machlokes? B'shur begin. Only by Gittin. Ava b'shtaras af Rabbi Yehuda modeh, but b'shtaras also Rabbi Yehuda concedes. Now this is an interesting thing here. The Korban Eid and the Rebaz want to change the girsa to af Rabbanan modu, because that's exactly what the Bavi says. The Bavi says the Rabbanan don't require that it be Eino Yochel Liz Dayif, that the document can't be forged by Gittin, do require that by Ksuva. Why should they require that by Ksuva? So, by Shtar. Sorry. Also by Ksuva, by other stars. So why is it required by other stars? Because we want to be more stringent in order to prevent forgeries. However, by get, we're relying more on the Eidim than on the possible production of forgery, so therefore it's not so much a problem. They didn't make such a takana here. Okay? Right. So that's if you change it to Rabbanan Modu. Then you are Machmir on the Babli. They had it already.
They got it. And everybody's whiskey's left?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
If you had a Marvin,
I think he might be a driver. Maybe that's it's probably driving somebody around. So in any event, so again, if you hold like the Korban Eda and Shait and the Ridbaz, so it should be Mapli and Begin of Restores Afra bottom moided that we're more Machmir. But the way it's written in front of us is the exact opposite. Mapli and Begin of a Restores Afra Yehuda moided means we're more Mekel. Which Rabbanan required that it be Ziyuf proof, that it can't be erased. By Get will not require that by Shtar. And also and even Rabbi Yehuda will concede that point. Rabbanan don't require Ziyuf proof by Get, they don't require Ziyuf proof by regular Shtar. And going to give in front of us, even Rabbi Yehuda will be made by other stars that they don't have to be Ziyuf proof. Okay? So again, if you have the girsa like what it is in front of us, so it comes out a kula that just like by Get Rabbanan hold that it can be written on a forgeable substance. Even by other storos, Rabbi Yehuda even concedes that it's okay. If you change it to Rabbanan, then it's a chumrah, right? That even though by Get you can't write it on Ksav Shachli type by Shtar, it can't be written on Shtar Shachli type. And even Rabbanan who hold that Get can be written on Shtar Shachli type, hold that here can be written on Shtar Shachli type. So it says more deep potter law. This is told specifically so far, although the more we're negging this later on. Shtar al-Cholak, if the Shtar is on the smooth part. Eidim al-Machad, the Eidim on the part which is obviously erased. Okay? So in that case, nevertheless, it's possible it's okay by other stars, just not by Get. Mishlokish amar lo shani ben Gittin mishtaros hi machlokas. Yerushalmi says it doesn't make a difference whether talking about Get or Shtaros. The machlokas, whether this is valid or not, is the same machlokas. The Potter law, because he learns, Shtar, it should be, in other words, we'll goof a little bit. Rabbi Lezer says, "Ma pliim begittin abu shloshar shtas rayudim," that's Rabbi Lezer speaking. Lezer says if there's since that's the case, the patla shtar chok ve'edam amachak. So again, I'm going to learn according to specifically now the Shai Torah Yisrael and the Pnei Moshe that if that he when he said the Lezer said Abishos Rabbi Yehuda Moida. he's saying that the only time they're moided that it's okay with the star is on the smooth part and the edim are al machak, right? Because then we see, like the first line says here, because then we say that in that case, mistam it wasn't forged since the star itself looks like it was the genuine article. No, nobody concedes to anybody. It's always a machlokas. And the Patala is talking about obviously a different case, because otherwise, where she's arguing Rebbe is talking about the Patala star, it should be switch words around. Star al hamachak, the edim al chasima. If you have the star on the eraser and the you have the star on the eraser and the edim on the race part, that's considered to be a machlokas as well, smooth part, right? V'kasha, and we have a difficulty like this, and it should be instead of Amalei Adarei Reila, it should be Adarei Shlokish. They have a question on Reish Lakish. If the witnesses are on the smooth part, again switching it, why could you possibly machshir? They don't know. We don't know what they signed on because the other part is erased. Now, even if it's written over, but maybe it's written over after the divorce. So it says Mar B'Zir Kum Raimona Chacham Shem Shitas Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Lezer that you know what Rabbi Lezer holds by now? Edim Sira Karti. So since Edim Sira Karti, so we don't care. We're not going to look at the Edim on the document. We're going to look at the Edim Sira who come in front of us. That's why it's okay. All right.
Assuming that those Edim read.
Well, assuming right, we assume that. Okay. So therefore, it should be, the next line is superfluous. We'd have to change it. So let's just skip it. Shmuel says it's even good if both are on the machak, both the writing and the edus. All right. Why is it good? Says Yosem Rabbi Yehuda. My time to Rabban. In that case, Rabbi Yehuda sounds good because Rabbi Yehuda says no good. Why would Rabbanan say it's good? Rabbi Abba Nikru who everybody could tell if it's erased once or erased twice. Is that interesting? I don't remember the Bible readings down. I didn't have time to look it up. But therefore, even if it's written completely al machak, you can still give it. Can still use it again. Now it's probably only by shiur stars, not by Gittin. But by shiur stars, he says it's okay. Okay. Halacha, and then we'll stop. Everybody can write again. Even a minor, etc., an idiot, and a child. A woman writes her get. And a man can write the receipt, even though that's the opposite of what they're supposed to be writing. Now it's safrus, so everybody can do the safrus. The main thing is the chasimas. Everybody can bring get Suma of a nachri, a blind person, and a goy who can't say properly for nechtam. Now, in the Gemara here, Mashbiach changes the order. First, let's read Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan asks, Omar Voksiv, because of law, lishma, you have to write for a purpose, right? You have to write l'shem the isha. So you have to write l'shem the isha. How can a cotton do that? Cotton doesn't have das l'shem the isha. Now, going back to the first line in the Gemara, it's fits without shots. If a gadol is standing over the cotton, we assume that the gadol imparts the cotton with the cotton to das.
Same thing with a shota?
No, only with the cotton. Oh, pikech though it says. Yeah, it's got to be the shota too. You're right. So it doesn't explain here why it takes the place of das, but you're right, it does by the shota, because otherwise when you use the word pikech, we use the word gadol. That's right. That's a good point. I don't remember. In the Balvi, I think it always says gadol omid agabov. I think it's only going on cotton. Here it sounds like it's going on the rest of them too. This interesting point that you raised. Okay? Shmuel says no, nevertheless. It's not enough just to have him sign with the gadol omid agabov. An adult has to write the Torah of the get. Because that's the Ikar Megarish. But asking Rabbi Shlokish, Kasav Tirfa V'Tovas Pasal. So Rabbi Shlokish said, if you write the Torah like the Tovas, Shalol Lishma, it's possible. The Torah has to be written properly. Okay, we'll stop here for this evening.